So, good morning and welcome to this week's Breakfast with Mike. And this week we're talking about assistants. We talked about when, how, who, when should we hire one? How should we do it? Who should we find? And I put in there that you can do it for free. And of course, the easy way for me to cover that is simple. If you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. So if you aren't getting help, you're not paying for help, it's free. For some of you, I question the type of help you're hiring because it's so easy to get sidetracked with all of the other things that we have to do during the day. So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to cover some things that you can look for to find help inexpensively. Having an assistant doesn't necessarily mean I need to go out and hire somebody to work for me 40 hours. I don't. First assistant I had probably worked 10. But it'll change, depends on your level. So you need to start with some questions. What are you trying to do during the day? What are you looking to accomplish during the day? Well, for most people, what we're looking to accomplish is setting up appointments, right? Whether it's listing appointments or buyer appointments or we're negotiating, that's our number one job. And unfortunately, we sometimes let all of the other things around us get in the way. And we don't end up prospecting for new business. So that's the first question you've got to ask yourself is, what are you looking for? Are you looking for somebody to take 10 hours a week and handle all that follow-up stuff? Are you looking for an administrative assistant whose sole job might be to handle once you put something under agreement or once you bring in a listing, they handle it from that point on. You know, they take care of all the paperwork. They make sure all the dates are met. Are you looking for that kind of person? You have to think about what it is you're looking for. That's the number one question. What's holding you back from doing the things you know you need to do? You know, I've said this before, the number one reason why most people don't hire a coach is because they think they already know what they need to do. And that's what they say. I don't need you. I know what I need to do. I'm just not doing it to the level I need. I just got to change that. I got to be more focused. How's that working out? And it seldom is. It's almost sad when I hear people say they know what they need to do, but they don't do it. What'd you call me for? Why'd we start this? If you know, then you know you should find somebody. Well, it's the same thing with an assistant. If you've even thought about hiring somebody, if you've ever said to yourself, boy, I wish I had somebody that could do this, this, or this, would make my job easier. The problem is producers look for that. They look for ways to find people to take that time off their hands. Non-producers don't, because they would rather be doing the non-productive stuff. Why? It's easier. It's simpler. Sending out mailings, this kind of setting up showings, but it's easy. There's nothing to it. But when you get on the phone and you start talking to people, that's different. Because they can say no. And none of us wants to hear that. Nobody. I've never met anybody that says, boy, I can't wait to get on the call and hear all those no's. But nobody wants to hear that. And yet, that's exactly what's going to happen. So once we've asked ourselves, okay, what am I looking for? If you're somebody that's looking to close, and I'm gonna kind of level it here. If you're gonna look at closing, let's say 30 deals or more, you probably need some part-time help at the least. If you're looking to close 40 to 50 deals or more, you need full-time help. You need somebody to take away all these other things that are getting in your way so that you can get face to face with people. That's what you need. Now, we look at this and say, can you net more money with an assistant? You need to be real clear about this. Nobody that uses an assistant properly nets less money. They all net more money. Now, the easy way to look at this is, how much do you make hourly when you're sitting down with a seller or a buyer? Well, I track that. And there are some people on this call that were part of that. And we came up with two numbers. One number was people that are working more buyers than sellers. They make roughly $500 an hour. The people that are working more sellers than anything else, they make $1,100 an hour. Let that sink in for a second. What I tracked was their prospecting for listing appointments, their actual listing appointment when they went on it, once they got it, the servicing that they did, how much, and then how much they made and how many hours they invested in it. I had them track those numbers. $1,100 an hour was the average for listings, and $500 an hour was the average for buyers. So let me ask you, how many of those things that are on your list that you might say to yourself, I got to get that done today, how many of those things could be delegated? How many could you hire somebody to go do for you so that you get that $1,100 an hour time slot back? We kid around with some of the one-on-one students when we talk about home inspections and how everybody wants to go to the home inspection. It's an hour and a half or 2 hours long. And I say, no, don't go. Why? Two reasons. Number one, you're a liability. Your buyer will ask you, what do you think? And unfortunately, we have too many agents who want to answer that question. They want to show how important they are. And so they answer that question and you become a liability. Because if something goes wrong down the road, trust me, your buyer will sue you because their attorney will tell them to include everybody. So we feel like we have to be important. I'm there to support my buyer. And we go and we're actually putting ourselves in a liability situation. The second reason that you shouldn't be there is that you could hire somebody to go on behalf of you, and you could take that 2 hours and invest it in either another buyer or a seller and make a minimum of $500 an hour. How many people do you think you could hire right now, just off the top of your head, that would go to a home inspection for you for less than $1,100 an hour? I've said this before, and I know it kind of gets morbid when I say it, but if you died today, your buyer would still close. They'd go to their own home inspection. They'd still close. You're not as important as you think you are. What you're supposed to do is focus on the things that help make you money. And that's sitting down with people that can buy or sell things. There's two big mistakes that I think most people don't understand, and that I know I made, and a lot of others have made it as well. But the two biggest mistakes are thinking that we're more important than we really are, and then hiring people that are like us. That was a big mistake that I made. I kept looking for people that were like me so I would get along with them. And I finally came to the realization, that's because my broker pounded it into me, that I wasn't the right person to hire somebody. And she ended up doing it. She knew what I needed, so she did all the interviews. And then she got it down to two people and said, you can pick either one of these and you'll be okay. So she made me feel like I was making the final decision, but she'd actually already eliminated a lot of people that were like me, but that's not what I needed. Very few top producers have I ever met that are good at the paperwork part of our business. It's not what we do. It's not what we're good at. What we're good at is sitting down, getting somebody to sign something. That's what the top producers are good at. Whether it's a buyer broker agreement or listing contract, whatever, it doesn't matter. Where are you going to find people like this? They're all over. But I want to start at the lower level. I want to make sure you understand the lower level. Okay? How do you find assistant help at the lower level? Well, first you have to decide what it is that you're looking to have them do. Even when I hired my first assistant, the list of things that we do is so big that if I paid her hourly, I'd have gone broke. So I had to pay her, I had to compensate her not just by an hourly wage, but also as part of the transactions. So she got bonused every time we had a closing. And that's what made it worthwhile. 24 hours a day, 168 hours a week. Every one of us has the same number of hours. Nobody gets more hours. Everybody's got the same number of hours. So why is it top producers are more successful? They've got the same amount of time you do, but they understand the value of the time. And that's the second mistake that I made. When I hired somebody, I didn't communicate that early on. It took me a while to figure that out. Finally, I turned around and I said, listen, your number one job is to keep me booked. That's your number one job. Find people that I can sit down and have them sign something. Because if I'm not booked, I can't afford you. That's what I said to her. So your number one job is keep me booked. I was lucky. She understood what I meant. Every morning she would be in the office, and most times before me. And she would run a list of expireds. She'd check the phone numbers. She'd make sure the numbers were right. And she'd leave them on my computer. So when I came in, when I went to start my computer, the first thing that was there was a list of expireds to call. She would go different ways to get to the office, and she would write down the numbers of any new sale by owners that she saw, and those would go on my computer. So when I came in, it wasn't like I could just turn around and start the computer and start wasting time. The first thing that happened was those numbers were there. Who does that for you? Well, I do it. How often do you do it? Well, a lot of times I don't get a chance to, yeah. But what if there was a way that that could be done for you? Now, I know this is going to sound silly, but some of you don't want that. And you don't want that because you want to be in control of when you will or won't make calls. The problem is that's not how you become a top agent. You become a top agent through consistency of generating more and more leads. The more leads you have, the more they will turn into clients. But if you're not making those calls, well, guess what? You don't generate the leads. Oh, I'll buy them. Okay. Well, we've already got experience with the conversion rates of leads that are bought. And it's around 1 to 3%. So think about that. Every 100 calls you make, you might get a lead. Might. Because it's an average, which means you might have to make 200 calls to get 2. And both of them show up in the last 5 calls you make. And you already made 195 calls. And then the last 5, you get 2 leads. Well, guess what? That's an average of 1 out of every 100. So finding people to do some of these things that you need to get done is huge. It's huge. Finding somebody that does all the paperwork. By the way, if you tell me you like paperwork, you're using that as an excuse not to do the things that will get you in front of more people. Yeah, but it has to get done. I agree. It does. Just not by you. How many times do you think an attorney does all here's a better way of doing this. Some of you are from states where you go to closings with attorneys. When you show up for one of those closings and the attorney looks at the package to have the client start signing, in most cases, has that attorney even seen what else is in the package? Or did they start flipping through the pages just to get themselves used to, again, what's in there? Every single time they do the same thing. They start flipping through the pages. Now, I've never been to a closing with a title company, but I'm going to take a guess and say, I'll bet you they do the same thing. They start flipping through the pages. What does that tell you? It tells you they didn't put that package together, did they? Their paralegal put it together. Or their administrative assistant, if it's a title company, they put it together. They made sure. And the first thing that's on there is what? It's a checklist of all the things that are in that package. And they take that page with the checklist and they put it on the side, and then they go through each page, and everyone that gets signed, then they check it off. Because until everything is signed, they don't have a legit closing. When everything is signed, and I love it when they do this, they call their paralegal back in. Right? And what does the paralegal do? Looks at that first page. And they will immediately say, oh, come on, Bill, you got to get this one signed. Where's this one? That's exactly what happens. And that paralegal is getting paid 10% of what the attorney makes. But unless that paralegal sees everything done, you're not closing. If I wrote you a check for $1,000 every time you went on a listing appointment, how many would you go on? Every time I ask that question, people go, well, like 10 a day and lots and all. And so I say, okay, well, why don't you? Well, because I got to do all this other stuff. No, you don't. You got to find somebody to do that stuff so you can make the stuff that pays you $1,000. That's what we got to do. Let's find somebody that does that, or something that does that. I said to you before, if I had paid my assistant hourly for all of the things that we did, I'd have gone broke. That's why I bought Top Producer. Top Producer was my first CRM. Well, actually, my first CRM was a recipe card box so that I didn't forget to call people. Yep, I know. That was my first CRM. My second CRM was Top Producer, which I understand is a very expensive product now. It wasn't back then. It is now. It's considered to be the best product out there. But you need to find a system. All of you work for companies that have systems, and you just don't use them. And the number one reason I hear from people, well, I don't know how. Well, learn how. You know, there's a learning curve to everything we do. I went through a big learning curve hiring an assistant. I made so many mistakes. But once I finally figured it out, I was never without an assistant again until the day that I stopped selling. I always had one because I understood the value. What they gave me back was something I couldn't get anywhere else. It's not like you can go out and buy time. You can't say, today's Friday, I want to save it and use it tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. Every day we get 24 hours, and you decide how you're going to use it. I don't want to use it doing $10 an hour work or $20 an hour work. I want to do the $1,000 an hour work because that's how we make money. If I asked you how many of you got into this business to go broke, I don't think I'd see a hand go up. And yet, that's what happens because we're so focused on the $10 an hour work. And then we go home and the spouse says, how was your day? And we have the audacity to say, oh my God, I was so busy. If I could speak to every single spouse or partner you have and say, okay, when they walk in the door, ask them this question: how much money did you make today? When they turn around and say how busy they were, you say, okay, how much money did you make? And they'll give you an excuse. Oh, well, it doesn't work like that. Yeah, it does. There are only 5 things that require your license. We need a license to list. We need a license to sell. We need a license to negotiate for either that buyer or seller. We need a license to host an open house, and we need a license to prospect. Those are the only things that require you to have a license. That's it. 33 years in this business, I've never found anything else that requires your license. So what should we be focused on? Those things. Now, if you're closing, let's say, less than 20 deals a year, you might not need a full-time assistant. Some of your companies provide administrative help that gets some of that work done for you. Some of them don't. If you're doing less than 20, you might need a part-time assistant. Well, where are you going to find it? Where are you going to find somebody that'll work part-time for you, that you can tie their income into the closing instead of paying them hourly? Look in your own office. Start there. We all saw the study, 49% of the people in our business doing 1 deal or less. Maybe some of them would consider, and they know a little bit about the business, they might turn out to be somebody that could help you. Even in the case of the 70% do 5 deals or less, ask one of them. Maybe they need some additional income, but they're really not cut out for all the prospecting. That they have their license hoping some deals fall in their lap. But in the meantime, they're really not making a lot. Instead of them going out getting a part-time job flipping burgers, maybe they could work part-time for you. And you turn around and say, listen, I need help with all the paperwork. You know the paperwork. I'll give you 10% every time we go to a closing, or 15%, or whatever it is. I'd be willing to bet right now that if I said to each one of you individually, if I sent you the name of somebody who needs to buy or sell, would you pay me a 25% referral? Every single one of you would. Every one of you would pay me a 25% referral for the name of somebody who needs to move. Well, instead of paying me, pay some type of assistant. Find somebody who will do that kind of work for you and pay them at closing. Most of them haven't been to a lot of closings. They're going to get overwhelmed with the number of closings you can send them to. So if you're doing less than 20 deals a year, maybe even 15. I know some people that are doing between 15 and 20, they probably still need help. But it starts with that list. What do you want done? And I would start personally with the things you know you're not good at. If you know you're not good, it's time to find somebody that can do those things on your behalf. For me, like I said, her number one job, my first assistant, her number one job was to keep me booked. If you don't think you're the right person to hire somebody, ask your broker. Pay them. Say, hey, listen, I'll give you $100. I need you to, I'll run the ad, but I need you to do the interviews. This is what I'm looking for. If you are the broker, find another agent that can do it for you. We're just not as good at it as we would like to think we are. For those of you that are looking to close 30 deals or more, you need help. There's no doubt in my mind, you need help. This has been one of the biggest things that I have worked with on top producing agents as long as I can remember. And it is one of the biggest battles I have with everybody, no exceptions. One of my one-on-one students, I must have battled with them for 2 years. Yeah, I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need it. Finally got him to hire one. He's been through a couple of them. And when he lost, he panicked. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I said, relax and let's go find somebody else. If you're doing 30 deals or more, or your goal is to be doing 30 deals or more, that's another part of it. If I've been doing 10 or 15 deals and I want to close 35 or 40, I already know something's got to change. And one of those things could be an assistant who does these other things. And that gives you the time back that you need to go schedule more appointments. And if that happens, pay them well. Pay them well. The last thing you want to do is hire somebody on the cheap, and then they get another opportunity to go work for somebody else. For them, this is not personal. They need to make a certain amount of money. If you're not paying them, they'll go find somebody else. So if we're on that early stage, we're doing 15 deals or less, we can find somebody that maybe we can just pay as a percentage of our closings. Once we start doing 20, 25 deals or looking at 30 deals, 35 deals, we need to have somebody there. That's a different thing. We're going to pay them hourly. And be prepared. They're going to ask you for raises. If you've ever looked at the hierarchy of a company, it's usually, that CEO that's at the top, and then there are the vice presidents that are underneath. And I used to look at it as my assistant was at the top and I was below her. I took orders from her. Why? Because I told her, your job is to keep me booked. She did the things to keep me booked. If I was going to turn around and go, well, no, I'm not going to do that, well, that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. She's doing her job and I'm holding her back. So I hope this is making sense. Some of the looks on some of your faces are like, yeah, no, I can't afford it. And you're still thinking that way. Believe me, every single one of you can afford it. Every one of you. Even if it's hiring somebody that you're just going to give a referral fee to on closings, every single one of you can do it. Why? Because if you're exclusively working buyers, and that's going to be the minimum, that's $500 an hour. How much do you think it'll cost you to hire somebody to do these things? It sure isn't going to be $500 an hour. It's going to be more like 10 or $20 an hour, depending on what they do. How many people can I hire at $20 an hour so that I can make 500? Don't think small, think bigger. Think about the goals you've set. How do you hit those goals? You have to make changes. One of those changes could very well be some type of an assistant help. In my opinion, there's 3 types of assistants. There's that full-fledged assistant that you hire when you're doing 40 deals and up. There's that mid-range assistant that you're going to pay referral fees to. Actually, that's my lower end one. You know what? There's 4 levels. That one you're paying a referral to might be second, because the other assistant is you. You're at the bottom rung. Because every time you're doing $10 an hour work, you can't do $500 an hour work. Can you? No. Every time you say, I'm going to go to that home inspection or I'm going to go to that appraisal, that's 2 hours you lose and you can't get them back. Could I turn around and have somebody do that for me? Yeah. And then I go do the things that'll make me more money. Time is an investment. You're either investing your time to do this work or you're investing somebody else's time to do this work and you're paying them for it. At the very least, when you are your own assistant, stop doing all of this, oh, I had to, during business hours. I had one woman that I was training one time, she kept telling me about she had to go do grocery shopping. And I went, what, in the middle of the day? And she said, well, that's when it's less crowded. I said, oh, why don't you hire somebody to go do it for you? She went, what? I said, yeah, hire somebody. How much is it going to cost you? 20 bucks an hour? Think you could hire somebody for 20 bucks an hour to go do your groceries? You just give them a list. These days, you could probably go to a lot of these grocery stores and fill out the list and they'll deliver it. So all I got to do is have somebody at the house. But the truth was, that's not why she did groceries. She did them because she didn't want to be doing the things that would have made her more productive. She wanted to just wait until deals fell in her lap. So she made excuses. Oh, I couldn't do that today. I had to go do this. I had to go pick up the dry cleaning. I had to, whatever. I had to go get the car washed. That was another favorite of mine. Really? You're not meeting anybody. What do you got to keep the car washed for? No, don't say that. It's up to you. You decide. Are you worth it? If you're honest with yourself and you say, yeah, I want to get to that next level, when you look at most of today's top producers, they have assistants. In some cases, they have multiple assistants. Many of today's top producers not only have administrative assistants, they have buyer agent assistants that work for them. You have to decide, what is your time worth? And can I find somebody to do some of those other things so I can focus on that $1,000 an hour? And I'm going to close with this because I know I got your attention with that. If I wrote you a check for $1,000 every time you went on a listing appointment, whether you got it or not, how many would you go on? Every one of you will say, yeah, a lot of them. Well, why don't you? Because all these other things are getting in my way. Well, then find somebody to do those other things and you go do the $1,000 an hour work. And then send me an invite when you get your award from your company, because I'll come and support you. I hope this was helpful. I'm going to turn off the recording, let these guys throw some questions at me. If you got questions, all you got to do is hit that link on my website and book 30 minutes for free, and I'll answer whatever you need. For now, have a great one. Let's turn this off.